So we started last year an extension of the GeneSys project to focus on the companies that have worked with us in Latin America, also opening to new ones, but particularly those that were or are still struggling with the COVID-19 pandemic. And that's key because as is known by everyone, this is the segment that has struggled and suffered the most as a consequence of the shutdown and also the contact with people. Now, what we did, we outlined a project conveying also three different research lines. From one side, focusing on the cash. As I said earlier, cash is the key component that explains not just the survival and efficiency of the micro and small firms, but it's also the main component when we are in a crisis. So companies look at the cash and start paying attention when they build their priority plan in any supply chain risk management strategy. So now, cash seems to be even more relevant for micro and small firms. So how to improve the cash availability? By focusing on supply chain management logistics operations. The second study had to do with the adoption of technology, specifically that technology and digitalization that helps micro and small firms offer products via different channels like web pages, things that will allow also accessing to different type of customers, but at the same time also delivering. What are the challenges of delivering, now via home delivery or using other systems or providers. But now how to reach out the customer becomes also a challenge. And the third one also was related to the safety, in terms of the food industry. Like how you are guaranteeing that your product keeps the standards of safety, given now the conditions of the pandemic, and how you can, again, communicate this to the consumer to, get your product there during this time. So we studied all these three dimensions, and we outlined a project, had more than 400 companies working with us, and we did everything online with the huge support of these, universities. There were around 14 universities in 6 countries in Latin America taking part of this analysis, and the students, they receive all the credit of this analysis. But imagine that at the end we came up with very interesting insights. So, for instance, the management of cash. When the companies are managing cash, the cash is highly dependent on something that we call the cash conversion cycle. So the average amount of days in which you convert what you keep in inventory into cash. And that is highly dependent on how much you have of inventory, but much more importantly, depends on what do you sell to the consumer and how fast you can get that cash from the consumer, and also how fast you need to pay to the provider. So there are three main. So when you want the provider to allow you to pay later. You want the consumer or the customer to pay you immediately, and you want to manage your days of inventory very smart so that you keep the minimum and get as fast as possible. So now, when we look at this, we came up with very interesting insights. For instance, if we will see how large companies, large really retailers are putting pressure to suppliers. Typical comment, when you serve Walmart, one of the most important customers for almost any CPG, how many days does Walmart have to pay you back, to pay you the money for those deliveries? And usually this varies, but goes for 90, 120, 180 days. Now, if this company delivers now to a smaller retailer, a micro firm, so question, how many days do they have to pay you back? And the answer when we checked, I'm not talking about just the CPGs and the retailers, but we can look at restaurants, any company, particularly those that are in the service. It turns out that the amount of days that they have to pay is minus 5 days. So the majority pay 1 week in advance, which is striking, right? Because that means they're actually funding, the larger players. And then it seems counterintuitive, but it seems, if you want it faster, then the rate changes. Now, it seems, just with analysis we observed, there were companies that actually were paying 40 days in advance. 40 days in advance. This is shocking. Now, if you will just tell them, please just charge me at the moment of the transaction, keeping the same amount, that already will increase the survival rate of the micro and small firms substantially. And this is part of what we are trying to you also mention here. Everybody wants these companies to survive because they are also part of the supply chain. You as a larger player are as strong as the weakest component of your chain. And this is something that we are trying to really understand. There are actually models that we are studying at the moment. I'm working with a master's student from the current supply chain management program, current class. And the analysis shows that it's possible to actually even change and charge at the moment of the transaction, increasing a little bit the rate, which in turn actually increases also the shareholder value added of the supplier, as well as the micro and small firm. So there are alternatives that can actually improve that, and we are trying to better understand those with real data. So all the data we capture allows us to really understand relationship with SKUs, relationship of the cash conversion cycles, days for each of these SKUs, suppliers, and customers, and then come up with better strategies how to manage relationships and help companies, micro firms, by focusing on these practices, improve their cash availability. If you want to improve it, it doesn't mean go with sales. Forget about sales. You want to improve cash, focus on your inventory, and improve your relationships with your supplier. And this is part of this analysis, just to show an example of the type of research we are currently doing.